I will never destroy this perfect body just to push out a screaming child. Samantha's voice echoed through the glass walls of the penthouse living room. She stood in front of the mirror, dressed in a silk robe, adjusting her diamond necklace, her words sharp like knives. Her husband, Richard, sat quietly on the velvet sofa, watching her with tired eyes. It was not the first time she had said it. In fact, Samantha repeated it like a mantra every time Richard tried to raise the topic of children. Tonight was no different. He had come home late from his office in the city, exhausted, but he still tried to gently remind her that their marriage of 3 years had produced no heir. But Samantha was not the type to listen. She was a vision of beauty, slim waist, perfect curves, flawless skin, and hair styled by the best professionals in the city. She walked with the confidence of a queen, her perfume announcing her presence before her lips ever spoke. She was known across the city as the woman every man wanted, but only one man had. And yet, despite all her beauty and luxury, Samantha carried a pride so sharp that it cut even the man who had given her everything. Richard sighed deeply, folding his hands. "Samantha, must you say it that way? I'm only asking for a child. Our families expect." "Expect what?" she snapped, turning around. Her eyes flashed with arrogance. "Do you know how much I pay for my body treatments? Do you know how many hours I spend keeping this shape? And you expect me to throw all that away, to become like those women in the market with sagging stomachs and rough faces? Richard, I am not a baby machine. I am a slay queen. Look at me well. This beauty is my crown, and I will not exchange it for your silly dream of fatherhood." Her words burned. Richard stared at her, his jaw tightening. He had built his empire from the ground up, a luxury real estate company that had turned him into one of the richest men in the city. He had given Samantha everything. A mansion overlooking the skyline, cars that gleamed like mirrors, closets full of designer clothes, even private trips abroad. But despite all of this, she gave him nothing in return except her beauty and pride. Outside the tall windows, the city glittered with lights. The sound of traffic and nightlife floated up from the streets below. Somewhere out there, families were gathering around dinner tables, children were laughing, couples were holding babies in their arms. But here, inside the golden cage of the penthouse, Richard sat trapped in silence while Samantha posed before a mirror, caring more about her reflection than her marriage. "You should be grateful," Samantha added coldly, sliding on her heels. "Do you know how many men in this city would kill for what you already have? I am your trophy, Richard. Not your servant, not your baby factory. If you want children, go and adopt. As for me, I will never carry a child and ruin this body." The finality in her voice left the room colder than ice. Richard's chest rose and fell with restrained anger, but he said nothing. He simply stood up, picked up his briefcase, and walked to the balcony. Samantha didn't even turn to look at him. She was too busy taking a selfie, capturing her beauty under the glow of the chandelier, posting it online with the caption, "Forever young, forever flawless. No kids, no stress." Little did she know, those words would become the curse of her life. Children are chains and mothers are slaves. Samantha shouted over the loud music, her laughter filling the VIP lounge of Velour Nights, one of the most exclusive clubs in the city. She leaned back on the leather sofa, a crystal glass of champagne in her hand, her glittering dress hugging every curve of her body. Her friends, other women who lived for the nightlife, burst into laughter. They adored Samantha. She was bold, ruthless, and unapologetic. She said the things they secretly thought, but were too scared to voice. Tonight, she was on fire, mocking every woman who had chosen the path of motherhood. One of her friends, Lydia, leaned forward, adjusting her wig. "But Samantha, what if your husband leaves you for another woman? What if he wants children more than beauty?" Samantha smirked, her red lips curving into arrogance. "Let him dare. There are 100 men waiting for me. Men with money, men with power. I am not some ordinary village wife that he can threaten. I am Samantha, the queen of this city. Men want me for who I am, not for the babies I can give." The table erupted in claps and cheers. Someone raised a glass. "To the queen who will never be a slave to motherhood." They all toasted, their laughter spilling louder than the music. But outside their circle of glitter and arrogance, whispers followed Samantha everywhere. Women with children shook their heads when they saw her on social media, flaunting her nightlife and mocking motherhood. She would post photos at 3 a.m., draped in diamonds, with captions like, "While they change diapers, I change designers. Babies cry, but I shine. Why waste 9 months when you can stay flawless forever?" Her followers applauded, flooding her page with comments like, "Queen, teach us the way," and "Motherhood is overrated. You are proof." But behind those compliments, there were critics too. Many whispered that Samantha's arrogance was dangerous, that beauty fades, but legacy comes from children. Samantha didn't care. At home, Richard sat in their penthouse alone, scrolling through his wife's Instagram. Each post pierced him like a knife. The man who once felt pride showing off his wife now felt humiliation. Other men in the city were beginning to laugh behind his back. They called him the husband of the Slay Queen. A man who could buy skyscrapers but couldn't convince his wife to give him a single child. Still, Samantha was blind to his pain. She was drunk on attention, addicted to the flashing lights and the admiration of strangers. Her nights stretched into mornings, her body moving from nightclub booths to luxury spas, from champagne glasses to shopping bags, while her husband's patience grew thinner and thinner. One night, as she danced on the club floor under the neon lights, a young mother walked in by chance, carrying her sleeping baby in her arms. The woman had come to pick up her sister, who worked at the bar. The sight of her triggered Samantha's sharp tongue. "Look at that!" Samantha shouted, pointing at the woman. "Dragging a baby into a place like this? Mothers are pathetic. That could never be me. I was born to shine, not to suffer." Her friends roared with laughter, clapping their hands. The young mother, embarrassed, bowed her head and walked away quietly, her dignity intact. But that small moment became the seed of a storm that Samantha didn't see coming. By the end of the night, as Samantha stumbled into her chauffeur-driven Bentley, she posted another picture online, her makeup smudged but her pride untouched. The caption read, "Children are burdens. I am freedom. I am Samantha." What she didn't know was that her words were now spreading beyond her circle of admirers. They were being whispered in the offices, in the markets, and even in her husband's own boardroom. The city was beginning to watch. And not all eyes were admiring. "Why do you keep embarrassing me in front of the whole city, Samantha?" Richard's voice was low but firm as he adjusted his cufflinks, sitting across from her at their marble dining table. The chandelier above them sparkled like 1,000 stars, but the air between them was heavy with unspoken war. Samantha didn't even lift her eyes from her phone. She was busy scrolling through comments on her latest Instagram post. Her followers were praising her for her flawless body and mocking women who allowed themselves to grow fat with children. The praise made her lips curve into a smile, the kind of smile that only added fuel to Richard's frustration. "I'm asking you, Samantha," Richard repeated, his patience cracking. "When will you stop this madness? 3 years of marriage and still no child. Do you even care how this makes me look? My family keeps asking. My business partners whisper behind my back. How long do you expect me to endure this humiliation?" Finally, Samantha looked up, her eyes flashing like sharpened glass. She set her phone down slowly and leaned forward. "Richard, do you know what is humiliating? Watching women lose their beauty after childbirth. Watching them fade into shadows of who they once were. You think a baby is a blessing? To me, it is a curse. I will never tie myself down to motherhood just to make you or your family happy." Richard's chest tightened. "You call a child a curse?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "A curse to beauty. A curse to freedom. A curse to my throne as the queen of this city." That evening, Richard had arranged a private dinner with a few close friends and business partners in their penthouse. He wanted to gently open the conversation about children, hoping Samantha might reconsider if the people around her emphasized the importance of family. But instead, Samantha turned the dinner into a stage. As the guests clinked glasses and enjoyed the gourmet meal served by uniformed staff, Richard tried once more softly. "My love, don't you think it's time we thought about having a child?" The room fell silent. Everyone waited for Samantha's response. She threw her head back and laughed loud and sharp, as if he had just told the funniest joke in the world. "A child? With this body? Richard, please don't insult me. Do I look like one of those village wives who exist only to pop out babies? Look around this room. Everyone knows I was born to shine, not to babysit." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some coughed. Others lowered their eyes. Richard's face burned with humiliation. Samantha wasn't done. She raised her glass and continued. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me make it clear. This body, this beauty, is my empire, and I will never trade it for a screaming child. If Richard wants babies so badly, he should hire a surrogate or find some desperate village woman. As for me, Samantha does not breed. Samantha reigns." Her words landed like poison in the room. Richard's hand tightened around his wine glass until he feared it might shatter. His friends exchanged uneasy glances, pity written on their faces. Richard wanted to shout, to tell her she had gone too far, but the weight of his pride kept him silent. Instead, he swallowed his anger and forced a bitter smile, excusing himself from the table. He stepped out onto the balcony, the cold night air wrapping around him as he stared at the glittering city below. Inside, Samantha continued to laugh with her friends, basking in the sound of her own arrogance, blind to the storm that was building around her. And for the first time, Richard whispered to himself, "Maybe I made a mistake." The city was talking. Everywhere Samantha went, her name floated ahead of her like perfume, sweet to some, bitter to others. At the Crystal Galleria Mall, a group of wealthy wives sat in a cafe, sipping cappuccinos and whispering behind designer sunglasses. Their manicured nails tapped against porcelain cups as they spoke. "Have you heard what Samantha said during that dinner?" one asked, lowering her voice. Another scoffed. "Of course. Who hasn't? She declared she would never give Richard a child. Imagine the shame. A man of his status, begging his wife for children like a beggar in his own home." A third woman shook her head. "Beauty without humility is dangerous. She thinks her face will last forever. She forgets that time is stronger than any makeup brush." They all laughed quietly, the kind of laugh that hid judgment beneath its sweetness. For them, Samantha was a cautionary tale. A woman too proud to understand that her throne was built on sand. But across the same mall, in the luxury boutiques, young girls looked at Samantha's Instagram posts with wide eyes. They whispered to each other as they tried on imitation designer bags. "Did you see her last picture? That dress was from Milan. She was at Velour Nights again. She looked like a goddess. I want to be like her. She lives free, no husband controlling her, no children tying her down." For the younger generation, Samantha was not a warning, she was an icon. A living proof that beauty and boldness could break every rule of tradition. Back in her penthouse, Samantha reveled in the dual attention. She knew some despised her, but she also knew many adored her. To her, hatred and admiration were the same thing. They both meant power. She scrolled through her social media, seeing her face plastered across gossip blogs with headlines like, "The Queen Who Refuses Motherhood." Is Samantha redefining marriage? Beauty over babies, the new trend? Some articles condemned her. Others praised her. But all of them kept her in the spotlight. And for Samantha, the spotlight was everything. Richard, however, felt the sting of every word. At his office, business partners exchanged glances when he walked into meetings. At social gatherings, uncles and aunties pulled him aside with pity. "Richard, my son," they would say, "a man without a child is like a tree without roots. Don't let this woman destroy your legacy." Their words gnawed at him, but Richard remained silent. He still loved Samantha, or perhaps he loved the image of her that once captivated him. But the cracks in their marriage were widening, visible for the whole city to see. Meanwhile, Samantha only grew bolder. She threw another rooftop party, where she strutted in a gold sequined dress, holding a glass of champagne like a queen with a scepter. As the city skyline glowed behind her, she raised her glass and declared to her guests, "Let the world gossip. I am Samantha, the woman too beautiful to bow to tradition. I am not here to produce children. I am here to rule this city with my beauty." Her words sent her admirers into cheers and her critics into deeper disgust. That night, as the music thundered and cameras flashed, Samantha smiled to herself. She believed she was winning. She didn't realize the city was watching closely, and that admiration could easily turn into resentment. And in the corners of that glittering city, powerful women and watchful elders were beginning to whisper, "This pride will not end well." The Emerald Gala was the crown jewel of the city's social calendar. Held once a year at the Crystal Palace Hotel, it was where the wealthiest men, the most elegant women, and the most powerful leaders gathered under chandeliers dripping with diamonds. The hall shimmered with gold accents. Waiters in white gloves served champagne on silver trays, and an orchestra filled the room with soft, classical music. Richard, dressed in a custom tuxedo, walked beside Samantha, who commanded attention the moment she entered. She wore a floor-length gown of emerald silk, a diamond tiara glinting in her hair, and a necklace worth more than a small mansion. Cameras flashed as she swept into the room, her chin lifted high. She knew she was the star of the evening. But where Samantha saw admiration, others saw arrogance. Conversations paused as she passed, whispers trailing behind her like shadows. Still, she smiled, certain that envy was proof of her power. As the night unfolded, Samantha found herself surrounded by admirers, young women asking about her beauty secrets, men offering compliments that bordered on worship. Richard, meanwhile, kept his distance, sipping his drink in silence. His wife had long since stopped being his companion. She was now a performance for the crowd. Then, just before dinner was served, a hush fell over the room. Walking slowly into the hall was Madame Eloise, one of the most respected matriarchs in the city. She was in her late 60s, elegant in a dark velvet gown, with pearls around her neck and a dignity that silenced even the loudest voices. People rose slightly in their seats as she passed, out of respect. Samantha, however, did not. She continued laughing loudly at a joke one of her admirers told, sipping her champagne without even acknowledging the older woman. Later, during dinner, Madame Eloise approached Samantha's table. She leaned gently toward her, her voice calm yet firm. "My dear, you are truly beautiful. But remember, beauty without legacy is like a palace built on sand. Do not despise the blessing of motherhood. A child does not take away your crown, it strengthens it." The table grew silent, all eyes shifting to Samantha. Everyone expected her to nod politely, even if she disagreed. But Samantha never did what was expected. She leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing. "Madame Eloise, with all due respect, I am not here to collect advice from old women who wasted their youth giving birth. You may have chosen to stretch your body and lose your beauty for children, but I am smarter than that. I will never allow myself to become a tired, wrinkled mother begging for attention." Gasps rippled through the hall. Madame Eloise froze, her dignity unshaken but her silence heavy with disappointment. Richard's heart sank. He could feel the eyes of the entire elite society burning into him, judging not just Samantha, but himself for marrying her. Samantha, however, was unmoved. She raised her glass high and declared loudly, "I am Samantha, the queen of this city. My body is my crown, my beauty is my weapon, and I will never bow to the prison of motherhood. Those who don't like it can choke on their tradition." The orchestra faltered, the waiters stopped mid-step, and a wave of shock swept across the glittering room. That night, Samantha's name was on every lip. The insult to Madame Eloise became the scandal of the season. For some, it was the moment they began to hate her. For others, it was the moment they admired her even more. But one thing was clear. Samantha had crossed a line that could not easily be erased. And Richard knew, deep in his chest, that their marriage was crumbling under the weight of her pride. The mansion stood like a jewel above the city, its white walls glowing in the morning sun, fountains spraying silver arcs into the air. Inside, however, the atmosphere was tense. Richard had invited his mother, Madame Grace, to spend the weekend with them. She was a graceful woman in her late 50s, with kind eyes that carried both wisdom and sorrow. For months, she had avoided interfering in her son's marriage, but the rumors had grown too loud. Everywhere she went, people asked her, "Has Samantha given you a grandchild yet?" The shame weighed heavily on her heart. When she arrived at the mansion, Samantha greeted her with forced politeness. She wore a silk robe, her hair freshly styled, her nails painted crimson. "Mother Grace, welcome," she said sweetly, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I hope you enjoy your stay in our little palace." Madame Grace gave a soft smile, touching her daughter-in-law's hand. "My dear, this is not just a palace. It is a home. And every home feels empty without the sound of children's laughter." Samantha's smile stiffened. They sat in the grand living room, where gold curtains framed tall windows and servants moved silently with trays of tea. Richard lingered near the balcony, listening carefully but saying nothing. "My child," Madame Grace began, her voice gentle, "I do not mean to pressure you. But you are the wife of my only son. I am not asking for 10 children. Just one. Just one grandchild to carry the family name. It would bring so much joy, not only to Richard but to me as well. My heart longs for it." Samantha placed her teacup down carefully, her face calm but her eyes flashing with pride. "Madame Grace, with all due respect, I am not a baby factory. I am not here to breed children just to satisfy family expectations." The words landed like thunder. Richard's hand tightened around the railing, his knuckles white. Madame Grace blinked, her composure shaken. "Samantha, I did not call you a factory. I am speaking as a mother. Do you not see how unhappy Richard has become? He loves you deeply, but you refuse to give him what he desires most. Marriage is not only about beauty and parties, it is about building a legacy together." Samantha's laugh was cold, echoing through the luxurious room. Legacy? What is legacy to me? Do you know how many women lose their beauty in the name of legacy? They sacrifice their bodies, their freedom, and in the end, their husbands still chase after slay queens like me. No, Madam Grace. I refuse to be one of those women. I was born to shine, not to stretch my body for children. Tears welled in the older woman's eyes, but she wiped them quickly. Samantha, one day you will understand. Beauty fades, but a child remains. You may think you are winning now, but time is not your friend. Samantha stood, smoothing her robe. Time may not be my friend, but I have wealth, power, and beauty. Those are enough for me. And as for Richard, he should be grateful. He has the most beautiful wife in the city. Isn't that more valuable than a crying baby? The room fell silent. Richard turned and walked away, unable to bear the cruelty of her words. Madame Grace remained seated, her heart broken, her spirit heavy. For the first time, she realized that Samantha's pride was not a passing storm. It was a wall that might one day destroy her son's happiness. And as Samantha poured herself another cup of tea, humming softly, she didn't notice the sorrowful eyes watching her, silently praying that one day she would fall, not out of malice, but so that she might finally learn. By the end of summer, Samantha had transformed her life into a full-time performance of luxury. Every hour of her day was carefully curated to maintain her throne as the most admired woman in the city. Her mornings began not with prayers or family routines, but with facials, massages, and yoga sessions led by imported trainers. Her afternoons were filled with boutique appointments, private fashion fittings, and endless hours in beauty salons where stylists worshipped her like a goddess. Her nights, of course, belonged to the cameras. Photo shoots in designer gowns, rooftop dinners with influencers, and glittering parties where she was always the center of attention. To Samantha, her reflection was her kingdom. The mirror was her altar, and social media was her temple. Her Instagram grew into a spectacle. Every post was a declaration, every caption a weapon. She posed in silk robes by infinity pools, in glittering dresses under chandeliers, in luxury cars that gleamed like mirrors. And beneath each photo, she wrote captions like, "Men beg for me, not babies. Motherhood is slavery, but beauty is freedom. Queens do not ruin their bodies for children." The comments poured in. Young women from across the city, and even beyond, cheered her on. "Teach us, Queen," they wrote. "You are the future. Children are overrated." But behind the applause, there was fire. Older women cursed her arrogance. Men whispered that Richard had lost control of his own home. And deep down, Richard himself felt his dignity being chipped away day by day, one Instagram caption at a time. Still, Samantha thrived. She was invited to brand campaigns, becoming the face of luxury perfumes and fashion houses. Billboards displayed her image across the city, her flawless smile staring down at commuters stuck in traffic. She believed she had won the game of life. One evening, Samantha sat with her friends at the rooftop bar of the Azure Towers Hotel. The skyline glittered beneath them, the air warm with music and laughter. Samantha raised her glass and, with her signature arrogance, declared, "Look at me. Do I look like a woman who should waste her youth with diapers and baby cries? I am the dream of every man in this city. They beg for me, not for my children. And Richard is lucky. Lucky to be the man standing beside me." Her friends cheered, clapping and shouting. Phones recorded her speech, and by morning, clips of her words had gone viral on blogs. But not all applause was real. Behind the screens, many laughed at her foolishness, saying, "Beauty fades, but shame is eternal." Others pitted Richard, calling him a king trapped by a selfish queen. At home that night, Richard watched the video in silence. He had always known Samantha loved attention, but this was different. Now, she wasn't just humiliating him privately, she was humiliating him before the entire city. He closed the laptop slowly, his eyes dark with a pain Samantha never cared to see. Meanwhile, in the guest room of their mansion, Madame Grace whispered a prayer before sleeping. "Lord, humble her before she destroys my son." But Samantha slept peacefully in her silk sheets, her phone buzzing with new followers, her pride untouched. And in her dreams, she saw only crowns and flashing lights, never realizing that shadows were slowly gathering around her throne. The office of Kingsman Real Estate Holdings sat high above the skyline, its glass walls overlooking the bustling city below. Inside, Richard sat at his mahogany desk, his face buried in his hands. For weeks, he had endured Samantha's sharp words, her arrogance, her public declarations that mocked him as a man. He loved her still, Or perhaps he loved the memory of who she once was. But his patience was running thin. That morning, another scandalous headline had appeared on a gossip blog. Samantha declares, "Men beg for me, not babies, even my husband." The words cut deep. It wasn't just his pride. It was his reputation, his family name, his legacy. Everywhere he went, people whispered, some with pity, others with ridicule. "Sir?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Richard lifted his head. Standing at the doorway was Clara, his personal secretary. She was a modest woman in her late 20s, her beauty understated but graceful. Unlike Samantha, Clara never wore bold colors or heavy makeup. She dressed simply, yet elegantly, and carried herself with quiet dignity. "Come in," Richard said, his voice heavy. Clara stepped forward, holding a folder. "These are the contracts for the new development in Ikoyi. They need your signature." Richard nodded, taking the papers, but she lingered. For weeks, she had watched him grow more withdrawn, more tired. The weight on his shoulders was visible. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Sir, forgive me for asking, but are you all right?" Richard paused. It was a question no one had dared to ask him honestly. At home, Samantha never cared. At social gatherings, people whispered but never spoke directly. Yet here was Clara, her voice gentle, her eyes sincere, asking not as a secretary but as a human being. "I don't know anymore," Richard admitted quietly. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the city below. "Clara, tell me, why do some women see children as blessings, while others see them as chains?" Clara's eyes softened. "Because, sir, blessings are seen only by hearts that are humble. Chains are seen by hearts that are proud. A child is never a curse. It is a legacy, a living memory of love." Her words struck him deeply. He looked at her, seeing the wisdom in her calm expression. For the first time in months, he felt heard. "Do you have children?" he asked. She shook her head, smiling faintly. "Not yet, but I hope to one day. I believe children are not just for women, they are for families. They bind people together in ways that money and beauty never can." Richard stared at her, silent. He saw in Clara what he no longer found in Samantha: warmth, humility, and respect. He didn't dare say it aloud, but something inside him shifted that day. Later that evening, as Samantha posted another photo of herself in a diamond-studded dress, boasting online that she was too perfect for motherhood, Richard sat quietly in his office, replaying Clara's words in his mind. Blessings are seen only by hearts that are humble. And though he did not realize it yet, his heart had begun to drift, slowly, quietly, toward the woman who understood him more than his own wife did.